Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the fascinating psychology behind human behavior during massive cultural events. Let's get right to it.
You know the drill, right? The whole world suddenly seems completely obsessed with a massive sporting event. People are crowding around TVs in bars, offices, and living rooms, totally riding this roller coaster of shared emotion. Yet right in the middle of this absolute global frenzy, a few individuals remain entirely unbothered. They're happily ignoring the break room sports chatter, maybe pretending to understand what offside means just to survive a water cooler conversation. They don't check the scores, they don't follow the matches, and honestly, they might not even know which teams are playing. So why is that? What actually causes such a dramatic divide in human attention?
Just look at the stark contrast here. On one hand, you've got the roaring, totally chaotic energy of a cheering crowd. And on the other, the calm, serene focus of someone just enjoying a quiet hobby, like reading a good book or watering a plant. One environment is super loud and outwardly expressive, while the other is quiet and inwardly focused. Both states are perfectly natural, but they represent entirely different psychological priorities.
Section 1. The World Cup Phenomenon.
Society is pretty quick to judge folks who ignore major cultural events, isn't it? There's this huge assumption that sitting out of the global conversation means someone is just disengaged or detached. But guess what? Psychology reveals that ignoring major matches absolutely does not make someone boring or antisocial. There are actually much deeper, far more interesting psychological reasons at play here. It really all comes down to entirely different psychological wiring and how the human brain evaluates rewards.
Section 2. Group identity and competition. Sports rely heavily on a deeply powerful sense of group identity. Psychology shows us that humans naturally love being part of groups. After all, human ancestors relied on tribal connection just to survive. Because of this deeply ingrained history, folks find massive emotional resonance when supporting a country, a team, or a local community. But here is the critical distinction. Some people simply do not strongly identify with these large, abstract groups. Their brains just don't automatically link personal well-being to the success of a distant sports franchise. And because that foundational alignment is missing, they completely miss out on that shared emotional spark. The collective euphoria literally does not trigger the same psychological response.
Furthermore, not everyone is wired to be motivated by competition. For hardcore fans, the thrill of winning and the absolute agony of losing provides a massive emotional high. However, a lot of minds find cooperation much more rewarding than the rigid concepts of winning and losing. While enthusiastic followers get deeply invested in the final score, others just look at the event as, well, just another game. Without a deep-seated emotional investment in the competitive outcome, the excitement feels incredibly weak.
Section 3. Where interests actually lie.
The human brain is highly efficient, and it pays attention strictly to what it finds rewarding. Since attention is a heavily limited resource, people naturally devote way more mental energy to topics that hold intense personal interest. The brain is essentially filtering out the ambient noise of massive sports events to protect its energy for other highly complex topics. So while the championship game completely captivates some, other minds naturally gravitate toward fascinating alternatives. These rewarding alternative interests might be the complex mechanics of business, rapid advancements in technology, the study of psychology, or the deep expressions found in music and art. What captivates one brain might be entirely bypassed by another, simply based on what the neurological reward system prioritizes.
Section 4. Resisting the social momentum.
So here is a crucial point. Major events often morph into massive social experiences. Everyone is talking about them, everyone is following them. It creates this massive wave of social momentum. However, some individuals are naturally just less affected by this wave. Psychologically speaking, these folks make decisions based entirely on personal interest rather than getting swept up in group enthusiasm. Even when the whole world seems to be absolutely buzzing with excitement, they remain completely unaffected. They're navigating by their own internal compass rather than bending to external social pressure.
Section 5. Playing versus passive watching.
Now, there is a massive psychological difference between the passive excitement of watching others compete versus the highly rewarding active involvement of learning a skill or working on a personal goal. A ton of people strongly prefer activities with direct personal involvement. Instead of sitting back and watching professional athletes compete on a screen, they would much rather spend their valuable time playing a sport themselves, mastering a new language, or building a project. For this specific psychological profile, active involvement in personal growth will always feel far more rewarding than passive observation.
Section 6. Limited emotional energy reserves.
Let's consider a profoundly important psychological concept. Emotional energy is absolutely finite.
Humans only have so much emotional attention to hand out each day. Cognitive bandwidth is a precious resource, and the brain has to allocate it very carefully. When massive amounts of energy are dedicated to real-world priorities, like nurturing relationships, pursuing personal goals, managing daily responsibilities, and overcoming personal challenges, there is naturally way less emotional bandwidth left over for distant events. The more invested someone is in their own immediate life and local surroundings, the less emotional energy remains for things outside their direct control. For many, there is simply zero capacity left to stress over a tournament outcome. While fans become deeply attached to a championship match, other minds are fully occupied with entirely different yet equally valid life priorities.
The ultimate takeaway here is really one of empathy and understanding. Ignoring a massive global event doesn't mean someone dislikes sports, and it certainly does not imply that something is broken in their social wiring. People simply become emotionally invested in different priorities based on their unique daily lives. By recognizing this, society can completely stop labeling non-participants as antisocial and start appreciating the rich diversity of human focus.
To perfectly encapsulate this entire psychological profile, consider this brilliant thought. What captures one person's attention completely may barely register in someone else's mind. That serves as a really powerful reminder of how unique every single human mind truly is. The world is vastly complex, and the way individual brains filter and prioritize that complexity is nothing short of incredible.
By understanding exactly why people think, feel, and act differently, humans can begin seeing everyday nature in a completely new and deeply empathetic light. Once the hidden psychology behind everyday behavior is revealed, the world literally becomes a much more fascinating place. So how will understanding these hidden behavioral drivers change the way we view human nature every day? Will it make us more patient, more curious, and more appreciative of those who walk a different path? Thank you so much for exploring this captivating explainer today. Keep observing the fascinating psychological world all around.